Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And yes, the delay I think was necessary. That was important. My question is to the Premier. On April 20th, regarding power rates, you said the way that rates are set by the OEB, that's how they're set now, and that's how we will set them in the future. Those protections are in place. Yet, on that same day, the OEB announced a 15% increase, and now consumers will be paying twice as much on peak. My definition and the Premier's definition of consumer protection are miles apart. In fact, she hasn't sold a single share of Hydro One yet, but prices are going up, making it more difficult for Ontario families. Will the Premier tell this Assembly right now what her sale of Hydro One
Please finish.
Will the Premier tell us right now what her sale of Hydro One will cost Ontario ratepayers and what it will cost Ontario families and what it will cost Ontario seniors?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, I think the member opposite made one of the points that I want to make, Mr. Speaker, which is these are unrelated subjects. The fact is that the Ontario Energy Board has set rates, and we laid out a long-term energy plan, Mr. Speaker, and in that we forecast what the rates were going to be, Mr. Speaker, and the
Goes both ways.
just announced by the OEB are actually lower than what was forecast in the long-term energy plan, Mr. Speaker. So the fact is that we are working very hard to take costs out of the system so that those prices can go down. And you know, the member opposite references the off-peak and on-peak prices, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, we want to drive conservation, Mr. Speaker. I know that the party opposite has not the slightest bit of interest in conservation, Mr. Speaker, or environmental concerns. They have no interest in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. None of that is of interest to them, Mr. Speaker. The fact is, it is of interest to us, and having a decent gap between the off-peak and on-peak actually drives conservation.
Thank you. The member from Renfrew come to order. I'm catching up. And the member from Prince Edward Hastings, second time. Supplementary.
Speaker, that answer wasn't even rational. And the Premier knows it because they changed their long-term energy program and their plan several times in the last 5 years. In fact, the sale of Hydro One wasn't even in it. In fact, it wasn't even in their platform. Electricity rates have tripled 3 times since her government has come to power in 2003. The OEB continues to raise its rates, and they're going to continue to drive up rates because we have to pay for expensive energy experiments by this government, whether it's industrial wind turbines or whether it is the smart meter tax machines.
The Minister of Economic Development, second time.
Ontario families struggle even further off peak. Why, at a time when Stephen Harper's government is making it easier for Ontario families to survive, is this government making it more difficult?
The member from Eglinton Lawrence will come to order. Start the clock. Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, I would just note that the member opposite couldn't even keep a straight face.
The member from Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke will come to order. Next one's a warning.
Mr. Speaker, I would just say that even the member opposite couldn't keep a straight face when she was asking that question. The fact is that the federal budget, the federal government has made decisions, and that they've made decisions for their political reasons. They've made decisions that if you're doing fine, if you're wealthy, then we're going to help you to do better. But what they didn't do was they didn't tackle the tough issues that are facing every province in this country, Mr. Speaker. They didn't tackle the infrastructure deficit, Mr. Speaker. They didn't tackle the fiscal imbalance. They didn't look at the communities in this country and say, we're going to work with you to make sure that you have an economic future, and we're going to support you in that economic development. They didn't do any of that, Mr. Speaker. They just said, if you're rich, we're going to help you get richer.
Be seated, please. Be seated, please. Attorney General, come to order. I'm not sure who said that, but I would appreciate immensely if the member would stand up and withdraw. I'm not asking for editorials either. Final supplementary.
Thank you, Speaker. It is hard to keep a straight face around here, given the embarrassment that we're going to see at 4 o'clock this afternoon with a budget that is still in deficit when the federal government can balance their own. But let's get back to the point here. The Premier admitted this week that hydro rates won't go up, but
Minister of Government and Consumer Services, come to order. Carry on.
Thanks, Speaker.
Minister of Tourism, Culture
Ed
and Sport.
Clark said he can't guarantee that hydro rates won't go up. And as our old friend in this chamber, Dalton McGuinty, once said, the best predictor of future behaviour is past behaviour. So I think we're in for a doozy of a hydro rate increase. Again, rates have tripled since you've come to power. They're going to spike another 42%, going up $100 per family in a household across this province. And just this week it was announced electricity rates are raising again by another 15% in May.
Question.
Will the Premier come clean and tell us how much her sale of Hydro One is going to cost Ontario families who are struggling under her government?
Thank you. Be seated, please. Be seated, please. Thank you. Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, the budget that we are going to bring forward is going to be a responsible one that is based on the plan that we ran on and that we are committed to, and that is investment in this province, Mr. Speaker. And it did include a review of assets, Mr. Speaker. We said we were going to do that. We have done that in order that we can invest in the public transit and the roads and the bridges that are needed all across this province, Mr. Speaker. You know, when the previous
Member from Dufferin-Caledon.
the party opposite was in power, Mr. Speaker, they had an opportunity to tackle many of these big issues. Yep. They chose not to. They neglected the electricity system, Mr. Speaker, and yeah, they worked toward balancing their budget, and the way they did that, Mr. Speaker, was very similar to what Mr. Harper has done. They balanced their budgets on the backs of municipalities, Mr. Speaker. They downloaded costs to the municipalities. We've uploaded those costs, Mr. Speaker. We're not going to balance our budget on the backs of municipalities or residents, Mr. Speaker, but that's exactly what Stephen Harper